I was just going to say that film in particular, The Girl Next Door, really was the second feature that I full on produced. And
Right.
for a second feature film, I'll say it's by far the most bold film I've ever made. And to think that that was the sophomore movie of my career is kind of like a little bit, jaw dropping for me, because I look at it now and I go, there's no fucking way I could ever could make that movie today. I just couldn't make that film again today.
Right.
And I don't think that I would want to either, especially having kids now. It's like one of those types of films that I'm proud that I was involved with and got it done. But now having kids, it's just that much more difficult to even watch the film, let alone think about what we went through to actually get it made. So, and again, I'm not afraid to go
change everything.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not afraid to go towards material that's edgy. It's just that subject matter and personal, in particular, is a little too close to home now. As far as just the age of my kids and thinking about what the kids in that movie, in the story, obviously not the kids in the film, but the kids that the film is about had to go through. And again, it's so funny because here we are having this conversation talking about The Girl Next Door at the beginning of this. And as of recent, Lionsgate has just released it's on Netflix right now, at least in the US, the latest 4K HDR. I think it's in HDR. It's definitely in 4K.
You had such an amazing cast of kids that were in this movie. Kids that were far beyond their years. I mean, I think the youngest, Madeline, I think she was 10 years old, if I remember correctly, when she did that film. And gosh, 4K. How clear do we want it?
To some degree, I almost feel like it doesn't necessarily. The resolution is obviously better, but oddly enough, it brings in more of the film grain too. So there's a certain element of cinematic kind of dirt that I think we stylistically left in the new scan. I mean, we did do some dirt cleanup where it was just non-objectively helping, not helping the actual film and making it look completely not good. Obviously, like there's dirt that helps and there's grain that helps, but then there's areas where it just was distracting, where I feel like what we've done is found the right balance between maintaining a strong image quality while also being true to the fact that it was shot on Super 16 and it is timeless. It feels timeless. I mean, when you watch the film with its latest iteration, its latest version, I feel like the aesthetic almost brings you into it, and because it does feel so much more real as well. It's almost like watching, it felt like a documentary almost. If there's a super realistic quality to it that comes through now, which I think is more impactful.
So. Remember, between chatting with you and the director, Gregory Wilson, I know that color was so important as well, and I could just imagine, like, I'd love to get the 4K version, even if I don't watch up to the point where they go to the basement, but just especially that first scene where young David first meets Meg as they're fishing or catching crawfish rather. Everything's so brilliant, and I can just see that being incredible. I think the term cult classic gets thrown around too many times, but I think you've got a movie like this that really stands the test of time as far as, I mean, I think if anything, especially through the pandemic where, the doors are locked and people are told to stay behind them. Obviously, restrictions have lifted since then, but, the stats are still there. We're seeing stats of abuse, kids' help phones, 911 calls have gone through the roof.
Like Dallas always said to me, he's so funny because I remember Jack Ketchum's name was Dallas Mayer, and his pen name was Jack Ketchum. And he always said to me, he's like, of all the books I've written, The Girl Next Door is the one that audiences keep finding it, and I keep finding that I get residuals, and and the film and the book keeps selling. And it is so polarizing that the material was absolutely, it was so risque and challenging because it was pretty taboo to make a film about child abuse in general, like especially trying to portray it in a way which really would be true to the story, without holding back as much as we could, and again, like, I think it is polarizing because, it's hard to watch the imagery that we shot, and it is an issue that consistently and continuously comes up in our culture as an American, country, or as the United States of America, where these things are happening constantly and there's relevance to it. I mean, child abuse is a very serious topic and many ways still a taboo thing to talk about. And I mean, whether it's people who've experienced it through the Catholic Church or people that have experienced it in their own homes growing up, verbal abuse and physical abuse are something that people generally don't like to bring up or talk about. And it's a really difficult subject matter to deal with because it is such a personal and private thing that people are scared to confront the evil that they've had to face when they were so young, processing or not knowing how to process the things that happened to them. And so I have a real deep empathy for, and like I said, I don't know that I can make this film again because I think it is that kind of film where if you've experienced it and you watch this movie, in one hand, maybe it's cathartic, but in another hand, it could be incredibly, create some serious post-traumatic stress. So I mean, right. But either way, it ignites the conversation. And if you haven't seen the film, I mean, Stephen King called it the most, the Dark Side of the Moon version of Stand By Me. And Neil Getzlinger from the New York Post said you need to bleach your brain. You need to wash your brains out with bleach after you watch this movie. I mean, it really, it sent shockwaves through the media and the press. And to this day, I did the same thing because I did notice that, there was kind of a resurrection of interest around the title, especially as of recent. And I Googled, and some of the groups and the amount of comments and conversations that have been happening about the film are mind-blowing. I mean, I'm talking like there are thousands of comments across multiple, if you add them all up, thousands of comments across platforms talking about this movie. So I do think for a sophomore film, and for those that haven't seen the movie, again, be pre-warned, it's probably going to be one of the most disturbing films you've ever watched or ever will watch. But at the same note, it is holding its own weight as something that, I think you can deem at this point a cult classic. And so I feel very grateful and honored to have been able to make something that can be revered as such. That being said, I also, am very cautious about how and who I recommend the film to.